We've got to go to the drama of yesterday, the Carlton St Kilda game. We've spoken about it already this morning, but it is sport at its height is the best reality TV, and that's exactly what we got a taste of. Carlton were up early, but then St Kilda looked like they controlled the game. Carlton were able to come back in the last quarter. In, out. Eventually, the Higgins goal was the thing that made the difference, but it kept Carlton supporters and AFL supporters absolutely on the edge of their seats.
Poor old Murray had to call that Higgins goal.
What about that?
His heart, there's vision of it. You check out our socials as well, SEN. There's vision of Murray when that Motlop goal goes through. He's celebrating. And
he's calling
the game. You can see his heart break. It's like the Simpsons episode where you see the heart. But anyway, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, look, you've got to admire the Blues fight. Now they lost a game of footy. We've lost all of this in it. They lost a game of footy, but St Kilda absolutely sieved a team that finished in the top four in Geelong in the second half last year last week on the same ground. And Carlton were able to put enough pressure on, enough heat on the same unit to be able to keep themselves in the game for as long as they did, and for all but were able to get the win. I thought, St Kilda themselves have been able to take some scalps along the way, play the Grim Reaper. 6 out of their last 8 games they've won, and they've taken some scalps. Higgins' goal, I know there was a caller that said he doesn't like him as a player. But
kicked a lot of goals.
Oh, look, he's an exceptional. Yeah. He's an exceptional small forward who does a lot of body work for his bigs, and he can find. He's an unconventional player.
Gets out the back. So I'm interested in your view here. I know I don't want to derail the buck stops. So what are the? I'm with you. I thought Carlton's last four was excellent. I can't really find a criticism for them, maybe other than just a few brain fades late in that game. What do you do now? You got the week off. How many you play injured? Clearly, Curno's not going to be 100%. Can Mackay come back from a 2-week quad? What do you do with, I guess, the psyche of the group? It's a really interesting week because you look at Brisbane, you go, on face value, they get beaten by 10 goals in the first final at the Gabba. How do they go about the next fortnight?
Well, all of it is yet to be seen. It's how fit are their playing group going to be? I mean, you look at, you've got Curnow, Mackay, Williams.
Yep.
Where does he sit? I don't think you take any soft tissue risk going into this.
So
you cannot afford to. Chera, TDK, does he come back in? McGovern, you'd have to assume that
be fine.
Maybe that he's fine to go. Martin's too much of a risk. Doherty from the Clouds. Boyd, who's been a mainstay for them at half. But in the end, what they've been able to do now is the balance of the teammanship and the consistency across the field and the fact that they've just bought into like high end pressure, and so it looks like Carlton the last 8 quarters, for the most part, they looks a little bit more what they were looking like at the back half of last year when they were making their finals run. So you got to look at when you're looking at talent players, you're going, well, who's going to help us maintain that? Because we can't bring anyone in who's not going to keep fierce pressure on the opposition, and that it's a coaching challenge. But they've also got 2 weeks now to be able to get themselves up and about, and that makes them, if they can match if their talent can be matched by that work rate that we've seen the last couple of weeks and pressure on the opposition, they're not without a shot.
All right, tell me about Port Adelaide.
Oh, look, I thought they were huge. I was interested more about the midfield battle and what they were able to achieve as a group. I think what Kenny has been able to do to sort of rewire and replumb that midfield has been exceptional, and he's rightfully proud of his group and his charges and the prospects ahead. Bergman back, Burn Jones went back again for a period of time in the second half. No Dixon, no Marshall, Willie Rioli and Georgiades as the mainstay. Their rucks, Vincentini and Sweet, who have come in instead of Soldo. So it is the last comment there. We're a different team. Absolutely, we're a different team. Big makeshift, yes, makeshift, but that's what footy is. He's been able to coach on the run. He's been able to adjust. I think the thing that has happened that has made them the damaging side that they are at the moment is they've decided to split their 3 young guns. So Horn, Francis, Rosie and Butters, and they now don't you don't see them in the midfield at
Never.
the same time. So what that's allowed, it's allowed two things. It's allowed Willem Drew to come in and sit and do his role, and which he did really well on Sarong. And Sarong's been a really damaging player across the season, will be right up there for All-Australian. But Drew did the job on him. And the other one is the advent is getting Ollie Wines into his his primary position as a midfielder. Had 31. He's returned to his Brownlow best form. And when you can add a player like that you thought was going south, then you've thickened the soup up through the middle. Mead's played a lot of wing. Boak's playing a bit of wing. Burgoyne owns the other wing. So they've been able to find roles. And I don't think you can underestimate the significance of a Willie Rioli, who was injured in the first part of the season. When the ball goes into his area, he either wins it or it gets halved. How many times do you actually see, like usually there might be some rebounds out of those contests for the opposition, but he actually, because he's so smart with his positioning, with his pressure is, he just angles. He knows the angles. He plays the boundary. Like he kicks, creates chances out of nothing, and he'll create a 50-50
Can they win the premiership, Port Adelaide?
Well, yeah, absolutely they could. When you've earned a home final in a top 4 game for a spot in the prelim, and if you could earn a home prelim, absolutely they could. I mean, we say this every year, I suppose. But Port Adelaide have won. They've done all right early in the finals. They just haven't been able to get over that preliminary sort of hurdle. There's no reason to suggest that this group can't maintain the rage and go forward.
The daunting task of this side of the finals draw, and we'll get it confirmed later on with Tom, but the loser of this game, like how important this first qualifying final is, because the loser of this game is going to take on a red-hot either Hawthorn or Western Bulldogs. Now, that will be at home. Even more important for Geelong probably to win this, because that one's going to be at a neutral venue, so to speak. But this qualifying final for the path through to the grand final is so vital. But they've won 8 out of their last 9. Awkward position for the Port fans who booed Ken Hinkley 9 weeks ago to rock up to a final and try and cheer for him. That was a disgrace at the time. It's even more of a disgrace now, and it's a really awkward position for those Port Adelaide fans who are probably busily deleting some social media posts from a couple of months ago right now. Tell me about the Dogs.
Yeah, well, the Dogs, their performance was huge over the Giants, and really, from the get-go, they looked like the better team on the day. I just love their pressure across the board. Their buy-in to put fierce pressure on the Giants' ball carrier was consistent across the 4 quarters, and it really was a consolidated win against a team in the Giants who've been performing really well. Pressure was huge. So it was 196 Giants and 195 to Dogs. So there was just no time, no space. So the conditions facilitated that, but the contest and the way that each of the sides wanted to play brought that to bear. I thought to see Callaghan on Bont, I love that, but Bont just found a way, and he was in the wars there for a period, copped 2 or 3 knocks there in a 5-minute period, but was able to get himself through that. Like Ugle Hagen's shot at goal, English's shot at goal that showed you what they were facing.
Yeah.
But then Bont has the same shot from 40 metres out and just nails it.
I know.
And so did Toby Green.
Yeah.
So you wonder, well, what makes the guns the guns? They find a way to receive all the inputs. Player running here, I'm running this far, like the ground shifting here, the wind's doing this, I'm this far out, I need to kick it with this trajectory. They just get it done. So it just shows you the class of some players, and I love that. But fundamentally, in the first quarter when the Giants had the wind, they were kicking long and taking territory and trusting their forwards to win contests, but they were beaten by the Dogs' backs who won those contests.
Yeah, I still thought the Giants' backs were enormous as well.
Well, they were.
Buckley and Taylor were enormous.
Especially early in the game, but as it broke, the Bulldogs forwards started winning their share of contests. They didn't win them over the top, but they won their share enough to hit the scoreboard, and there was some stoppage scores and some brilliance. Bontempelli's handball to Ed Richards running through there. How do you find that player? And then he's on the burst. It's an easy goal, but it's come from a really tough situation. So with that sort of pressure, the cream rose to the top. I thought Bailey Dale's kicking from, in that first quarter in particular, coming off halfback, he hit 2 or 3 targets, knowing that the ball was going to move 6-7 metres to the right.
Swung like 10 metres, just a little chip shot from 60.
You probably need to be there to really appreciate the skill of the players. But they're two hardened finals teams now. Giants will be okay. No Daniels, no Bedford, and Connor Stone to a lesser degree, who'll be on the cusp of selection. But
the worry for the
Briggs
Giants,
Briggs' shoulder.
He's the worry. He's the worry.
Well, he's been carrying that the whole year, so now he's got a couple of weeks to get that right. But yeah, look, fantastic effort. Qualified well. It's elimination finals for them right the way through, but they have had the experience of doing it. They're the only team that have done it the last 25 years.
That's the final I'm looking the most forward to.
They've just been so impressive with how they've gone about it. Like they scored heavily against the North Melbourne defence that has had that happen a couple of times. But if you look at their last 6 weeks,
smashing teams.
They've beaten Collingwood by 11 goals, Adelaide by 11 goals, Carlton by 12 goals, Richmond by 10, North by 20 goals. And they were 5 goals up against the Giants, leading into three-quarter time, and had controlled that game for 3 quarters. I reckon when you look back at it, they took a breath and they lifted their eyes and they thought, we're here, like against the Giants for 5 minutes, and they gave them an in and they took it. And I reckon they probably learned a little bit from that already. But across the board, they're a compelling proposition, and how do you coach against the Hawthorn Footy Club at the moment? They are so even across the board. They don't rely on a star player in any part of the field. So what they're actually putting forward is a real question in terms of, okay, how do you break them down? It needs to be fierce pressure across their half-back line. Eamon and Impey need to be turned around and made to defend as often as you possibly can. But behind that, Weddle and Frost and Scrimshaw and Sicily, they're doing the job really well. So, they're pretty strong defensively as well. Take Weddle, for instance. He played forward, he played back, and he played ruck.
He plays everywhere.
Sicily goes forward, kicks a goal, and was sniffing it like for that late. Dylan Moore, who's played around the ball and high forward, plays full forward in the last quarter just to have a look at something different. They are prepared to flick their players around. They are multi-positional. They all run hard. I think that seems like they've got an absolute belief that they are going to run their opposition off their legs. They play very similar to the way the Giants do at their best. And when the Dogs come up against them in 2 weeks, the Dogs will be trying to execute a very similar plan to the one that beat the Giants yesterday. They will be looking to bring the game into contest as much as possible against Hawthorn. But it's a fascinating watch, and you've got to, you look back and you just think, well, there's just some crackers ahead because there's some compelling stories.
Jarman Impey, the Hawthorn defender, is going to join us. We had a text earlier on this morning suggesting if Hawthorn held on to that 41-point lead against Port Adelaide, they finished second.
And that's right. So it's just a Darcy Burnt-Jones tipped
in the last moment
kick, the difference between finishing 7th and 2nd.
All right, let's move on to your last point. They would have played Port Adelaide. They would have played Port Adelaide at the MCG. Taggers?
All right, let's talk about it. Run with
Taggers.
Run with run with coolers, tags, shutdowns, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, scraggers. But how important are they going to be going into September, given some of the performances that we've seen? So you got Bontempelli, Heaney, Warner, Goulden, take your pick there. Horn Francis, Butters, Lockie Neal, Paddy Cripps. They keep coming.
Tom Stewart.
He's a point that I want. He's one that I want to look at in this because, But yesterday it was Willem Drew against Sarong, and even when he wasn't stopping him, he was still kicking goals. You'll be able to help me with this. So Sydney have James Jordan.
Yep.
So we know that he could go on anywhere on the field and get the job done. We know Port Adelaide have got Willem Drew. GWS got Bedford and they missed him. And he's become excellent at what he does, which is amazing given, being a small forward for the
It
majority
was the
of his
Butters
career.
one that he started on earlier on in the year,
Correct.
which was a big surprise.
And he's
from there,
actually played on guys bigger than
he
him
has.
as well.
So I
which
was
is
wondering
interesting.
whether he was going to do Bont yesterday or Treloar or Dale. We don't have the answer to that because he came out late. But anyway,
And I wonder how much of that was the Giants keeping in the back pocket. I'm not sure. So Brisbane have got Berry and Dunkley. Berry does it more into September.
Yep.
But that's a question mark on what they do. They don't have an established one. Western Bulldogs don't have a tagger. So they played Frazier on Green yesterday, but they're going about it slightly differently. Hawthorn have got Nash, and he's a big-bodied run with that can get it done.
McGuinness also played,
Yes.
whether he holds his spot or not, but he gives them some flexibility in that space.
You didn't even have him down there, but yes, definitely they have him, and if he stays in the side. And I think Carlton have got Hewitt, who's done it for a long time. Chincotta, who has run with consistently in different parts of the ground. Who was Geelong's?
No.
Who do you reckon? So O'Connor's out of form and is no longer in the team.
No, they have a bit of Mullen has done it.
But so Atkins will do it a little bit as a stoppage tagger. Jack Bale's been doing a little bit.
No, they don't have, and I think at this point in the year, if you don't have a player that you can have the confidence to go and do it, then you just back your own system. So the Dogs don't do it. They haven't done it for forever, really.
Do you think a side that doesn't have a good stopper is going to be able to get the job done? Because there's just too many guns on the other side to let them do what they want to do.
Well, Collingwood didn't have one last year. They win the flag. So there's something in teams that just have a full belief in their system, regardless of what that system is. Whether you run with a tag, whether you can go there halfway through the first quarter after half time if someone gets off the chain, or you've just got full belief in your system. And that's what you do at this time of the year. You're not going to change it now.
So just spitballing and going forward. So Tom Stewart's going to get tagged, right?
He'll get Mackinson.
There's no way that he will be allowed to run around on his own.
Zero way, Tom. If you're listening, you will not have any ounce of space, regardless of whether you start in the centre bounce.
And Geelong don't have a tagger / run with.
No, and if they did. Right, if they did Geelong and Port Adelaide ripped them apart in the first quarter earlier on in the year through midfield dominance, who would you go to? Is it Horne-Francis or Butters at the moment?
That's the benefit of having. So they've got Drew, but they've also got multiple weapons. Why wouldn't Tom Stewart just go and play on the opposition's best midfielder for the rest of the year?
Because he's never done it before, and I think it's unlikely to do something so unique in a big final at this time of the year.
But don't you see that consistently? That something that comes in late in September ends up becoming the difference between winning and losing.
Would you do that if you were coaching?
He's
important game of the year.
Win
home prelim final.
Are you going to run away? Are you going to run away?
I don't know. Is it going to mess with Tom Stewart's head? He's never done it before.
And be a sitting duck? No, you just let him hunt the football. He's running with
Tom Stewart is getting tagged. You're saying that he goes and stands on Butters at stoppage and locks him away.
Go and beat the opposition's best midfielder.
Unlikely.
So Pendlebury has done that. Pendlebury. So you say they didn't have it. Pendlebury runs with the best opposition midfielder, but he's smart enough to know when to peel off, when to go and find the ball himself.
He's also the smartest footballer that's ever lived. And has played midfield his whole life and understands the nuances of doing that.
So do you know what that role is like? It's like just being a high back.
Yeah.
Knowing when to stay with your man and compete, when to peel off and when to go and win the ball.
Finals wildcards, a few of those coming through. Blixarves is coming through as well. Bucks play Sheed as a blocking defensive forward in the 2018. That's harsh. You see, we just asked for
He played for West Coast. How did I do that?
I don't know. That was a stupid text. Finals wildcard, I'd love to see Sam Mitchell give Weddle and the Wizard 5-minute stints on ball. Imagine the havoc that they could cause, says Harley. One I reckon the Giants could use a bit more is Toby Green on ball. I was waiting for, when they were going against the wind in the second term yesterday. I just thought Toby Green was a bit starved in the forward line. I'd like to see him get some more on ball minutes. But is there anything you thought of that you did or?
No, nothing I could think of.
But
I mean, I think what you end up finding is that you do. It's the last couple of percent, and you can overreach a little bit with things like this as well, because there's a reason why you've been able to qualify. I mean, Hawthorn, they've come in the bottom half of the 8, but have a look at their form. They're going to be doing anything that they have used to date has worked, and it will be challenged, and there'll be tougher tasks ahead. But I thought that Sam Mitchell flicked a whole heap of stuff around in the last quarter and a half to have a look at what was happening. I know that even conservative coaches like Fagan and Longmire have thrown things around in recent times to prepare their side and their individuals to make shifts that they need to make for any eventuality going into September. And that's what I think. We know that Port Adelaide and the Dogs have done that throughout the year to qualify and to find a new norm. So those sides are actually in really good shape because it develops a resilience. It develops a couple of different levers that the coaches can pull.
Fremantle. So let's discuss this. I think it's a really interesting situation for them now. They lose their last 4 and cost themselves a position in the finals, which looked unthinkable a month ago.
Shattered.
So what do you do? So they've given. Are they all in on Longmuir, or are they leaving this up in the air? So we come to January, February next year.
They're in such a good spot.
I know that.
In the big picture,
Are they all in with this coach? Are they going to go all in? Here's a 3-year contract extension, or are they going to do this? Here's a 1 year, or are they going to wait until the midway point of next year? How is this going to play out?
Well, they got 3 early draft picks. They're basically what are they? Are they 9, 10, and 16 or something like that?
They're all in for topping up with bringing some experience in. We know that.
They've got young talent throughout their squad, forward, mid, and back. They would be absolutely kicking themselves. So just on their form and where their season finished, they lost their last 4 games, but their last 3 games were against top 4 sides. Geelong ran over the top of them. They weren't able to head either the Giants or Port Adelaide. But you look back over the season, they only won 3 games out of the 11 that they played against the eventual final 8. So that just says that they're against the best, their best wasn't good enough. But I think their game has developed. They're definitely playing an exciting brand of football. I think bringing Pearce back really hurt them when they brought him back too early. I think Tracy's injury was clearly a negative effect on their season, and I don't know. You can argue all you like about the 2 rucks and Sean Darcy, but if he's not available, that doesn't help.
No.
And I dare say he would have played if he was.
And Jackson's form line in the last 7 or 8 weeks was really poor. So what do you do? Are they all in with this coach, or are they just going to leave this open? Because the reason they gave him the 1-year extension was to take the pressure off from a media point of view. It's not going to happen now. It's going to be there like it was. The 1-year extension didn't fix that.
No, and we can keep looking. But I think if you look at their best footy, I think their best footy's been pretty good. They haven't been able to qualify, but I think they've evolved. I think they would have loved to have gone into a final series and seen what they could do, because I think their best footballs look pretty good. But there's plenty of sides that haven't had their choice of players that have had to so look at Port Adelaide in as an example, as that stark example. They've had to shift and change and find a different way to go about it, and they've been able to find better. Freo weren't able to do that. So the questions the jury's still out, but there's work to do for them. But I thought they took steps forward. I thought their best football was better. I thought the balance of their offense and defense improved, but they just weren't able to qualify.
1300 736 736 to have your say on the Mosa Homes open line. If you could handpick the Brownlow medalist, who deserves it?
Who deserves it?
You can handpick him right now. I say to you, Bucks, who was the most influential, best and fairest player for season 2024? Who would you want to see it, and who do you think deserves it?
Yeah, fair question, isn't it? I think.
Is there a right? I don't know if there's a right answer here.
I admire Marcus Bontempelli and the fact that he doesn't have one, and he's been so consistent. I think that he carries himself. I love the way that he carries himself. I think he's his balance of team focus, but then obviously high standards and expectations around his own performance are really strong. He's been used to, he'll play his role. Like, he'll either go inside and do what he needs to do there, he'll go forward if required. I probably would have him there, but then I'd have Cripps and Dacos and Neil probably close to that. Well, maybe Heaney, but he can't win it. So maybe so he's the first 2/3 of his season was exceptional.
Haven't heard your thoughts on the way that Adelaide handled the Josh Rachele situation. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought it grated with me, to be honest. You don't know the internal circumstances, but I wouldn't have suggested. I think that his contest from time to time has been on question, and obviously the me attitude at times. But I didn't think there was anything new of what we saw the week before to make that call on a disciplinary issue, or unless it was a specific disciplinary issue. Because if it was a thread and a theme, and they've been having conversations about it, I think it's always better to make those decisions earlier so the player has a chance to respond. So I would have thought that could have.
What if that should
have been done 5 or 6 weeks earlier?
What if they'd said to him 5 or 6 times throughout the year, Josh, this is the feedback, and what if after he went on radio ahead of the showdown, they said, "Hey mate, like, you've said what you said, but don't inflame this on game day." And then the minute he kicks a goal, he runs over to the crowd. And, I mean, what other option does a coach have other than? And it's not the first time. We saw Craig McRae lament Jack Ginnivan going to the races before the grand final, and they actually traded the guy as a result of it. So it's not the first time coaches have made a statement when players go outside of team rules.
If that's in fact what happened, and it was a direct request, demand on his attitude towards the next period of time about his comments on radio, well then absolutely
Could it be the making of him?
It could be, but
I think it could be.
What you're actually talking about is, say, if it's happened 5 or 6 times, been on the cusp 5 or 6 times, well then how strong has the decisions been made just to roll along and let this get to this point even now? I reckon good clubs, strong leadership, they nip those things in the bud right up front, and potentially they've allowed this to get to the point where you need to make a decision like this in the last game, going into an off-season. I thought Rachele handled himself all right. He was pretty clear about what the message was. So would that not suggest that he would have handled it okay if it happened, say, midway through the year or 18 months ago?
To be fair, publicly he's handled himself really well. Even when he had a couple of questionable moments, he fronted up and sort of said, yep, that effort wasn't good enough, and then confirmed that he loves the club and this is the place that he wants. I just think it can be the making of him.
It's interesting how, like, a lot of the nuts and bolts actually spills out a little bit more than it used to. Like clubs, and then we can criticise senior coaches, even Bevo, for earlier in the year. Like, so Caleb Daniels not playing and Bailey Dale's starting as a sub and Jack McRae's not in the side. We don't know why the machinations behind it or why some of those decisions get made. It might be a little bit about, how the team's going to come together. It might be about football strengths. It might be about attitude. But we're not privy to all of this. But we can see it when it happens outside of our frame of reference. We can be critical of the coach, but then we get a little bit more frame of reference with Rachele, and we're critical of the coach again. So we could have done it earlier. It's just it's an inexact science, and in the end, it all comes out in the wash.
Yeah. I thought it was an overreaction. I thought Matthew Nicks was fine and justified to leave him out of the side.